Hi, everyone. My name is Anya Pforzheimer. I am the Watertown DPW Recycling and Sustainability Coordinator. I am joined here with Conor Miller, who is from Black Earth. He's the CEO and founder. And I just want to give a big thank you to the library for helping us host this event. Really excited to be able to share kind of the wealth of knowledge that Conor has and to talk to you guys about our program. And then a little bit more information about what we're doing as well, kind of why we have this program, why we have the free compost program in the first place, and kind of a little bit more about our waste management program in general. So I will get started. So this is one of my favorite graphics that Black Earth has. I think it's really great. It kind of shows the whole cycle and it's a good introduction. So the agenda today is, as I just said, I'm Anya. I'm going to be talking about kind of why Watertown's focused on composting and the 2030 waste goals, which I'll talk about what those are, and then what our program is and how it works for the residents. And then Conor is going to come in and he's going to talk about kind of the how behind composting, kind of the nuts and bolts of what it is, why it's such a great thing, and what Black Earth is all about. And then at the end, we're going to definitely save a lot of time for questions from the audience. So tonight's conversation is going to focus on food waste and composting, but I'm going to kind of expand that scope generally to talk a little bit more about waste management as a whole, since I do a lot of that specifically with Watertown, and then how composting plays into Watertown's larger sustainability goals around waste management and waste reduction. Waste management, in my eyes, is kind of not so much about just dealing with things at the end of their life, but more about asking, why does this resource have an end of life? Conor is going to talk more specifically about Black Earth and kind of how they close that cycle, and they don't necessarily have an end to their life because it's all about the food cycle. And then kind of finishing with questions as I talked about. So this is kind of an intense graphic to be talking about, but we're going to start with talking about waste. This photo is from an engineering article, which was written in the UK. And the first line of the article is, the largest individual structure humanity has ever created is not a skyscraper, a pyramid, or even the Great Wall of China, but it's a landfill. This is a picture of a landfill. And one of the questions to think about tonight is, why does it matter? Why does it matter if we buy a water bottle, we use it once and we throw it in the trash? Why does it matter if after Thanksgiving, we take half our turkey and we chuck it in the trash and we move on? Kind of the two main issues to think about around waste are, how are we dealing with it? What are the environmental and health implications? And then what might be the problem with resources that are lost forever, that we're not able to reuse or recycle at all? What are the implications with that? So right now in the United States, these are kind of the three main ways that waste is dealt with. So here you can see we have landfill. This is area that's devoted specifically for waste collection. It's typically engineered. There's lining so that there's no leaching of chemicals. It's really land and energy intensive. And one of the big things that has to do with composting is that when you bring organic materials to a landfill, you create methane because they are digesting without oxygen. This is probably something Conor will touch on more, but that creates methane, which is a really potent greenhouse gas. The other thing that we'll talk a little bit about is they fill up. Massachusetts is actually at capacity for our landfills, so that's something to think about. Incineration is burning waste at a high heat, helps reduce the volume of the waste, so you still need somewhere to put the ash. This can be done at a large or a small scale, and it takes energy and skilled labor. Incineration with energy capture is similar, usually a much bigger scale, and you're burning and you're capturing that energy usually for heat or for creation of energy. And usually very centralized. This is actually one from Copenhagen. It's a ski slope and a waste energy plant. And so it requires a lot of transportation to that area because it has to be pretty centralized. In Watertown, we have waste energy. So that's where we are sending our waste currently. So we actually send it to Wheelberator, which is in North Andover. And we send between 600 and 800, sometimes above, tons of waste per month, which is kind of an astronomical amount. I wasn't even sure how many whales to compare that to, but somebody could do the math. And we pay per ton, so it costs the city a lot of money. All those materials that are burned are lost permanently, and they're not able to be reused, recycled, or kind of repurposed in any way. And so, especially when you're thinking about nutrient cycling, any food that you're putting in and getting burned, you're losing all those nutrients. You're not able to get them back. So in Watertown, we're working to kind of promote reuse, specifically as a way to reduce disposal needs and then to decrease the need to create new items as well. Oh, sorry. And so one of the things to kind of think about is when we're throwing potentially 800 tons of something away, what are we actually, what's going to the waste energy plant? What are we throwing away? What are we burning? And in 2018, there was a study done in Massachusetts to kind of look through what is going into the trash. And as you can see, this was the breakdown. So about 39% of it was recyclable. So obviously in Watertown we recycle, and it's always great to kind of keep working towards improving that. These problem materials are things that are pretty tough to figure out what to do with, potentially recyclable. And then 36%, nearly 40% of what was going to the trash was actually compostable material. So that's things like food, paper products, and then specifically compostable items, maybe like those cups or things like that. So items that could actually be composted. And so what is Watertown doing? How are we moving towards zero waste thinking? Kind of bringing it back to this idea of how did we get started on creating a free compost program in the first place? Initially, one of the really cool things that Watertown has done in the last 2 years is create this energy and climate resilience plan. It's something that was just passed probably last couple months. And in that, there is a focus on waste management specifically. And one of the goals was to create an organics recycling map for the city. And so that's something we've actually already been able to check off, which is starting this program. So we should feel really great about that. The other thing is that the city council specifically, recently ratified the Massachusetts 2030 waste goals, which are really lofty goals, but hopefully attainable, which is Massachusetts saying we would like to reduce the amount of material that we're sending to landfill or incineration by 30% by 2030. And Watertown has taken on those same goals and said, we would like to also reduce our solid waste by 30% by 2030. And those are based off of 2018 baselines. So 2030, not that far away, it's about 7 years away. And so food waste is a really important part of this goal because it's a really tangible way for Watertown to achieve this. In fact, we did some calculations when we were starting this program, and roughly, if there are roughly 5,000 households in Watertown that participate in the curbside program, that would average out to roughly 30% diversion of household materials from landfill. So that's a huge step in the right direction. So what is the program? I'm not sure people who are on here, maybe some of you already signed up, maybe some of you have been composting with Black Earth for 5 years, maybe some of you are just hopping on to kind of learn more about it. Basically, Watertown is offering its residents a couple of different ways that they can have free access to composting at their homes. So for folks who are living in buildings that have 4 units or fewer, they can get one of these small 13-gallon bins, the one on the far right, and Black Earth will come around once a week and they'll pick it up from your house, same as trash and recycling. For folks who are living in apartment buildings, we aren't able to do that yet. And so we actually have drop-off bins at our recycle center, which are totally free. You bring your food scraps there and those get picked up the same. In addition to both of those, all of the schools are having all of their food scraps in the kitchen composted as well. So the goals of this program were kind of accessibility, make sure that it's easy and accessible. And sometimes monetary barriers can be the biggest thing, which is why we wanted to make sure it was free. Education, things like this, making sure people understand the correct way to compost, why composting is important, what should be going in it. And then awareness, just growing interest and excitement for the program. We want to try and reach 5,000 households in the next couple of years, and that's going to take a lot of excitement from the city. The good news is we actually already have 2,000 households composting, which is pretty amazing. When we started in August, we were hopeful that we would get 1,500 by the end of June of 2023. So the fact that we've already surpassed that by 500 is pretty amazing. And we're hoping to actually expand it to 2,500 in January. One of the great things is that Black Earth is able to take on more and more residents, and they actually, as we scale up, they make it easier and more affordable for the city to do it, which is something that sending things to landfill and to incineration, it doesn't get cheaper as you send more. Whereas with Black Earth, as we get more residents, they're able to scale down the price, which is pretty amazing. So one of the things I just want to highlight that we're also doing is working within the schools. And so I worked with the garden coordinator and the science coordinator for the public schools, and we went into all of the 5th grade classrooms and educated them about what composting was, told them that we were already doing it in the schools, and got them excited about the fact that they were going to be leaders for the elementary schools. We're actually already starting to have the Lowell 5th grade composting in their cafeteria. So all of the kitchens are composting, but the 5th grade is the only grade right now that's going to be doing it in their cafeteria. And we're hopeful that they're going to kind of be educating the lower grades so that eventually they'll be able to do it as well, which is pretty amazing. And the schools will be getting compost back for their gardens, which is a big part of the curriculum. So thinking about kind of moving forward and what's next for this program, obviously we want to keep growing the curbside program to any residents that are interested. Right now that's done through DPW funding. Although the DPW has just received a $130,000 grant from the state for this program, which is pretty amazing, and we'll be able to expand even quicker because of that. We want to continue expansion at the recycling center so that folks who live in apartment buildings are able to utilize this program. Expansion of lunches at school, working with the 5th grade as I spoke about, and then kind of finishing the loop is getting the compost back to residents in the spring so that they can do more gardening in Watertown, and we can kind of close the nutrient cycle internally in Watertown as well. So that's kind of the lowdown on our program, why we're so interested in doing it. We're really lucky to be partnering with Black Earth. They've been a great partner, and I'm really excited to pass it over to Connor so that he can talk to you more about kind of Black Earth's mission, what they're up to, and so that you can have any questions you have about composting answered. So thank you so much, and I'll pass it over to Connor.
Ahoy. I might have some of those same slides just to warn everybody. But a couple of things jumped out at me from Anya's slideshow that, we did a waste audit for a town about a month ago, and we picked up from 100 households one week and then 100 the next week. And half of their waste was compostable, half of the trash. So that wasn't including recyclables. So compostable waste is really the lowest hanging fruit to cut down on our waste. And when all that trash goes to the incinerator, it doesn't just disappear. There's still like 10% residual ash that gets shipped down to the Midwest and the Southeast for landfill there. And Massachusetts remaining landfills are closing by 2030. And so it's a top priority for the state. They implemented a 2014 organics ban. So anybody that produced more than 1 ton per week had to compost. And they just lowered that to half a ton last month. So yeah, compostable waste is really, it's just such the easiest, lowest hanging fruit because we can also process it right here. You're not shipping recyclables off to China or something other than having it shipped back to be used once. We can process it within an hour drive of Watertown, turn it into compost, get it back to people to grow food out of again. Watertown is really a huge leader in this. We get asked by towns all over, how's Watertown doing it? And so it's really cool the steps that Watertown's taking. We did a survey. Why are people not composting already? And the number one reason was it seemed complicated. And that's really just a lack of understanding that it's all you have to think of. It's a lot easier than recycling. It's just put food in this bin. So we can do meats, bones, dairy, food, soil, napkins. And if you want to get into the technical stuff, BPI certified compostables. But just to be simple, there's compostable bags and you just put food in that bin and it all breaks down. If you can imagine putting any kind of food in the oven and turning it to 160 degrees for 3 months, there's not going to be much left. So that's the simple thing. Put food in this bin. The second reason was they think it's going to smell. And, if you don't take care of your bin at all in the summer, yeah, that can smell, but probably no worse than your trash can. And it probably smells better if you have kids with diapers in the trash. But so it doesn't smell. And then the other thing is people just don't think they have much. But again, it's like half the trash. So it all adds up and everybody makes a difference. So, and this is our process. You can take all this meats and dairy and all that. It breaks down because our piles are like 160 degrees. It's not a backyard pile. We mix it with carbon, wood chips, and blow a bunch of air into it, and then turn the piles a few times, screen it out. And it's generally like a 4 to 6 month process. Healthy soil is, the more life in the soil, the more life you can have above the soil, basically. And so the more we can put back nutrients into the soil, the healthier the vegetation, the animals, the food that you grow. Our food has lost, on average, about 50% of its nutrition over the last 50 years. So a tomato has half the nutrient content it did 50 years ago. And a lot of that is just soil depletion. We're just putting in the macronutrients and not all the micronutrients. And that's how factory farming has kind of worked for a long time, is just the simple NPK inputs and not returning the real organic matter to the soil. Our mission is to take wasted nutrients and convert that to usable nutrients, and to try to do it as easily and cost effective as we can. So with that in mind, about 3 or 4 years ago, we started building raised beds because there wasn't really an easy solution out there for people to build raised beds. They weren't selling them in stores that much, or if they were, they're like really flimsy plastic ones. But yeah, we're doing a lot of community gardens these days like that. Anyway, wondering if there's any questions out there. Not having compostable bags leak. I would say things like squeezing out and just not putting wet things in, like squeeze out your tea bag, or like I open my coffee pot and let the coffee grounds dry out a little bit before I dump them in. But other than that, yeah, there might be a little leakage out the bottom, and I just rinse the bin.
I typically put my compost in the freezer first. That's kind of my cycle in the kitchen, and usually that kind of keeps stuff from getting too wet because it sort of becomes a block, and then I put it in, and I can put it outside.
Yeah, that's like a treat for a driver in summer, is to get like an ice cold block. Is soap compostable? I wouldn't worry about soap in your bin, but if I wouldn't throw in like bars of soap unless like you look and see it's, I don't know, Dr. Bronner's type of natural only type stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't be loading up shampoo or something like that in the compost bin. Let's see, can you use yard waste for some of the browns? We can't really pick up yard waste at scale in Watertown because it would take up too much space. It is compostable, and we do pick it up in our smaller routes. But does Watertown have a yard waste collection?
Yes, we have curbside and we have drop off at the recycle center.
Okay. And what's the Watertown's rule on picking up from over 4 units?
So the reason we're doing that right now is more has to do with contamination. Typically, the more people that are putting stuff into one bin, if it's not carefully watched, like the recycling center ones are, that typically tends to be where there's the most contamination. Our hope is to be able to do education with apartment buildings so that we're able to get clean compost and food scraps out of them. But right now, it also has to do with which buildings are serviced by the city. So typically only buildings over 4 units are the ones that are serviced by the city. We do have a couple that are grandfathered in, which is why we had to make that distinction. Seeing what is the price difference in past in this program? So we had about 600 residents who were previously paying for Black Earth service directly, just as customers. That was initially why Watertown thought there might be a lot of interest in it, because we already had 600 people. And right now it's free to anyone that's interested. There is no cost associated with it. So that's kind of the best case scenario for price differences, that there is no cost.
Did you have any targets for how many residents you hope to get in 2023?
So initially our goals were for the 2023 fiscal year, which would have been this start into June, it was going to be 1,500. And then next year was going to be 3,000. Following year was going to be 5,000. Since we've already surpassed that and we have 2,000 already, my hope is that by the end of June 2024, we could already be up to 5,000. That's my hope. Connor, someone's asking, is wax paper have to be labeled as compostable?
I would say so, just because wax paper can often be a petroleum-based wax that covers it. So
how do you get one of the bins? That's a very good question. So you would sign up directly with Black Earth. So you go to their website, which is blackearthcompost.com/Watertown. I think right now we actually have a wait list, which is great. We love having a wait list because it means people are interested and we can keep pushing to expand it. And once you're on there, as soon as we open up, then you get notified and then a bin is delivered to your house.
Do you have any workplaces participating? Like, for example, if the library has a staff room where we eat lunch, if we compost, is that something that you're seeing and starting to, or is it only limited to households and not businesses yet?
So it's just residential at the moment. I think we're hoping to get into municipal buildings. So the library, City Hall, the DPW. I think right now the city will not be sponsoring businesses, but Connor, if you want to talk about partnerships that Black Earth has had with businesses in other cities, that might be interesting.
Yeah, we pick up from all sorts of businesses, whether it's an office or a restaurant, grocery store. Nothing is too big or too small. And we try to get the people from that business to compost at their house too, and they can all get referrals so that it's a cheaper sign up if it's, if you're outside Watertown and you don't have free pickups. But yeah, there's a wide level of, either we can go into the office. We have like a office run in the Boston area where we have a pickup truck. It's not like a regular truck, and we go up into offices, elevators, and all that. Or it's just right out to the loading dock. So yeah, there's a wide variety of business pickups.
Question is, what are the top 2 or 3 things that folks think are compostable but actually aren't? It's a good question.
Well, I could say our biggest contamination problem are fruit stickers. They survive the heat process and often fall through the screen during the screening process. So those are the one thing so we have to hire like 1 or 2 pickers to stand at the end of a conveyor belt just to get those stickers. But other than that, I would say there's some scams out there. There's like these fake compostable bags on Amazon. They call themselves like OXO biodegradable. And it sounds like it's compostable, and they have the right green color tint, so it's hard to catch, and they're like a third of the price. So that's one thing. I'd say another thing, pizza boxes are often recyclable. I don't know how Watertown treats pizza boxes, but a lot of towns are saying that you can put it in the recycle now. The grease isn't really an issue. So for us, we're not really like a paper recycling outlet. We don't. So some people think that we really benefit from all the paper, so they'll throw in glossy magazines and newspapers and all this stuff, thinking that composting is better than recycling. But we're not really a paper recycling outfit. The paper can get blown around. Glossy magazines aren't great. So we prefer not to take paper that could be otherwise recycled.
I have a quick question, which is, where do you get the bulk of your brown material? So all the cities give you the green, but where are you getting the wood chips, the other things like that?
Well, so wood chips kind of take a while to break down. There's tons of arborists that just there's like an endless amount of wood chips, but we generally do leaves and ground up brush. Leaves come from a variety of towns that just have tons of them and can't process them themselves. So they truck it up throughout the year. And then we also usually have a lot of like a horse population around our sites that people like to bring in their manure. And it's like 95% wood shavings from the bedding. So that's another great source of browns. But compostable, a lot of the stuff we pick up is kind of the browns too, like a compostable tray and stuff like that.
We're trying to get the schools to have compostable trays. Do you find that there are other schools that have been adapting to that who are getting picked up by you?
Compostable trays is a tricky thing right now to find the ones without PFAS. So some schools are going towards plastic trays to reuse. But otherwise, for some reason, it's finding the 5-compartment molded fiber ones without the BPI and getting it BPI certified there's limited options, but plates and stuff is a lot easier. It's funny how I eat all my food on a round plate, but for some reason lunch students need the 5 trays, 5 compartments.
This is a cool question. Someone says, I recently got packing from a clothing company. Maybe that's the packing peanuts that says compostable. Can I truly stick that in the compost?
Well, those peanuts are compostable. It's just, I'm always nervous because some people think theirs are. And I remember picking up some and it was totally styrofoam and it gets all over everything. So I would just say, put it in a glass of water, see if it dissolves. I think they're supposed to dissolve underwater, and do that first.
Alex followed up and said that they're bags. So maybe they're just compostable bags, which is kind of cool.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, if it's bags, it probably has a certification on it somewhere too.
Mm-hmm. And BPI is the one that you trust the most. Are there any
Yeah.
others?
Yeah, there's TUV, that's like a European one. Cedar Grove. There's a few, but BPI is really the US standard one.
Got it. And what is the material that it's made out of? Do you?
It depends, but like PLA is what the stiff, clear paper cups are made out of, or not paper, plastic cups. It's like a cornstarch or potato starch, polylactic acid, and that's like a pretty natural thing. But yeah, the bags, I mean, they're also kind of made out of some corn or potato. I don't know exactly how they make it. Yeah.
There was a quick recycling question, which I can just answer really quick, which has to do with how we can't recycle black containers because they aren't able to be read by the machines. Currently, we don't have a program. Ideally, we will have one in the future for someone who can take those. So something to stay tuned for.
Shelf life of compostable bags, I think it depends on if it's like 80 or 90 degrees, it might be more like 4 or 5 months. But I think in general, you can get a year out of them.
And just so people who might not be signed up for the program know, when you start, you get compostable bags with your bin. And then when you run out, which can take, they last for a while. If you only use one a week, you can order them directly with Black Earth and they will deliver them when they pick up your bin. So it's super easy.
Yeah, I think it really depends on storage conditions, because in my basement, I've got some here that are like 5 years old and they still work fine.
You do have to pay for the bags through Black Earth. You are welcome to also use a paper bag, as Connor was saying, so you don't necessarily have to purchase the compostal liners if you don't want to.
Yeah, we love double bag paper bags. They break down the fastest. They're free, and compostable bags are great too, but double bag paper bags are my personal favorite as a driver. And a composter, actually.
Connor, do you want to give a little background on how you started Black Earth?
Yeah, sure. I actually, I put together a slideshow of the early days.
Oh, well, nice.
All right, so this is our first truck and our first lift. And so that was about 12 years ago. And it couldn't pick up that much, but it got us through. And dropping off at Brick Ends Farm in Hamilton. They were the main composter around here that we used. This was our loader at the time. So we went from that first lift into garage door tracks as a means of picking up bins. That was our second innovation. And then we built our own screener because we were working on very little funds, and our own screeners tended to rattle themselves apart. This is probably our second or third site. And then we built our own bucket because the bucket on our loader was too small. But then the bucket on this thing was too big, and it was hard to drive around without almost tipping over. Eating chocolate chips. So that's our garage door track on the side of the lift. Pumpkins was always a big deal in this time of year. And then this is our modern design with these rail lifts that can carry a lot more weight, a lot sturdier. And then this is our iteration on when we started picking up textiles. We were throwing textiles into this tube, and when you go to dump, we started getting nervous that we might look like a nuclear missile silo, and the tube was a little too big for what we needed, so we removed the tube, but thought it was funny. And then we started producing compost on a little larger scale than with bigger screeners that we were renting. And here's our current truck type that we use without the lifts yet, but. And that's Cody. He's been our longest employee with us. I think he's been with us for about 8 years.
We've got a couple more questions here. What's the best way to compost a real Christmas tree after the holidays?
Well, in Manchester, where we have our primary site, we pick them up and get them all ground up, and then it goes into the wood pile. I don't know what Watertown does though for theirs. Is there a pickup for Christmas trees, Anya?
Yes, I don't know this year if we're doing like going around and picking them up, if we're having drop off and then we chip them in the DPW yard.
Then Jennifer, yes, you can use 2 paper bags and not need to use any green compostable bags. How do we deliver compost? Well, there are several ways. If you're well, I don't know how Watertown, do you know, Anya, are we going to do like a bulk drop off at some point, or?
Yeah, I think we're going to do like a big event, or maybe like 1 or 2 events in the spring, and have basically you guys do a bulk delivery and then folks can come and take it from a central location.
Okay. And if you want more delivered from your home, then you can buy it by the yard, and we'll deliver it in spring or whenever, really.
And I know Judy's asking because she's the garden coordinator, so she wants some for the schools, I'm sure.
Oh, okay. Well, that might be a bulk drop off then, but
yeah, which will
yeah, we can deliver to schools.
Yeah, I got you, Judy. Don't worry. You asked about the schools. If anyone has any more questions after this, definitely you can always reach out to me and I can ask Connor directly, or you can always email Black Earth as well. They're really great about answering questions.
Yes, we're happy at the library to also put you in touch with the DPW. And if there are just kind of a last call for questions, but thank you, Anya and Connor, for the expertise and helping us get some of our questions answered.